Retro.
Yeah.
Electro. Tech.
Oh yeah.
Hey, turn the lights back on. Wow. Retro Electro Tech. When real audio ruled the world.
Well, hello there once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Retro Ernest of Retro Electro Tech, and we're getting into part 2 with this Sansui Six. So, in part 1, this is the exact position that I left off in. And the reason why I'm starting out in this position again is because the device under test here, the receiver, whatever, has been sitting here during business hours, running. I've been making it work up a sweat. And for the last few days now, well, at the time of this video, I don't know, by the time I edit this and post it, I don't know how many more days are going to go by, but probably not too many. But anyways, let's go ahead and zoom back over here to the scope display. And you can see the 2 channels there and our square waves. So everything has been holding rock solid for the last few days that I've been running this. So I've been jumping around working on other stuff, then I'll come back and check on it. I'll vary the volume, I'll kick up the volume a little bit, then I'll turn it down a little bit. So I've just been making it work. It's been doing good, like I said. On that note, let me move forward. So I'm not going to go into a recap, and I'm not talking about electrolytic recapping, but recap as in I'm not going to repeat everything that was discussed in part 1, but I will just touch on it briefly. So this came in with a dead channel, and when I performed the inspection and testing and safe power up and all that, I'm not going to go back into that, but I discovered that number one, we saw that there were open fuses on the left channel, and then I performed a safe power up, and everything looked okay during the safe power up. I swapped around the fuses from the good channel to the channel with the blown fuses, the bad channel, whatever, and the suspect channel, and safe power up once again. Everything was okay. It wasn't drawing heavy current. It wasn't trying to go into meltdown mode, nothing like that. In fact, as we saw then and as we see now, the left channel is there. We have signal. That signal path on the left channel is fine as of now. It's looking good. Clear waveform. Audibly the waveform sounds good. Or audibly the channel sounds good. Everything is looking okay. How long that's going to last, as I said in the first video, I don't know. It may last indefinitely until the receiver decides to fail for another reason or whatever the case. Who knows? So that being said, though, I have been in touch with the customer. I gave him the rundown on what's going on because I talked to him a little bit earlier. He hasn't watched part 1. Not all customers do. I just throw the video link their way just in case they want to watch and they have it for their records. So that said, though, I talked to him, gave him some options. Option number 1 was you don't have to do anything at all. I was straight up with him in telling him that I've been running it for the last few days. Popped in some new fuses, not a single hiccup. You have both of your channels right now. Everything looks good. Everything is sounding okay. And there you go. And then I went on to explain some other options. Kind of gave him the rundown without boring him to death. And let him make some decisions based on that, what should ideally be done. Namely, as I always bring up, is at the very least, refurbish, restore the power supply and the amplifier boards. That would be a good idea. I talked to him about the controls, and I talked to him about my deep level of servicing with multi-flush cleaning. I'm not going to get into that in this video. I do a lot of videos where I talk about multi-flush cleaning, where I actually remove the controls so I have some access to them so I can tilt them around, spray them, work them over and over and over again, flush them multiple times, reintroduce lubricant, all that kind of stuff. He wants me to work on the amplifier boards and the power supply, redo those, but he doesn't want me to do a deep dive in the controls because that, in combination with the power supply and the amplifier, was outside of his budget. So that's okay, not a problem. Since on this unit, it seemed like underneath there is good enough access to where I could at least spray them out okay. And the switches, I'm not too sure. I think this, well, I know for a fact that this top portion, there's, 4 screws. There's a couple here and a couple over there. This plate does lift up. You can kind of swing it up somewhat. Anyways, I don't know how much disassembly of some other stuff in the area would be required for me to lift it up good enough. But I know all these push button switches with this panel pulled up can be accessed. I did see one switch from underneath that I could tell that the rear of the switch is wide open. So if all the switches are like that, that's fine. And I brought that out in part 1, so I'm not going to get into that in detail. But if I can just lift this platform up just enough to where I can hit the backs of those switches, I don't mind spraying those out real quick. I don't mind hitting these real quick just in place. I'm not going to remove the face, do all that. But I at least would want to hit the ones that I have access to and work them a little bit and at least return the unit back to them with something done to the switches. So I don't mind doing that. So anyways, let me move on from there. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to get this thing vacuumed out first because there's layers and layers of dirt. And once that's the case and I get all this cleaned up, I am going to pull the boards and start prepping to service them. Alright, so I have the unit face down on padded blocks. And I have the amplifier boards pulled. Okay, they're just sitting off to the sides here and there. Okay, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. Not much to them, but I am going to go through and tolerance check everything. But as far as electrolytic caps, there's only like 3 of them on the board or something like that. But the time is going to be in the sussing out of the boards as far as, again, like I said, tolerance checking everything and just making sure everything is within spec there. So also too, let me zoom in on the power supply board, and I think I'm going to have to drop the exposure a little bit because at least in the back of the camera it looks all blown out. So anyways, so this board here, there's really no slack to pull it out and kind of dangle it a little bit more. I'm going to flip around back and kind of show you what I'm talking about. But what I am going to do, because I am not going to pull the whole board out unless it was absolutely necessary as far as detaching all the wiring and all that, and I'll show you why in just a minute. But anyways, if you notice here, we do have quite a few caps on this board. Plus, aside from caps, I need to go through again and tolerance check everything else and just make sure everything is looking healthy there. But what I can do when it comes time to access the bottom of the board, because that's the thing that I need to do, obviously, to get all the caps out and get the new ones in. So if I pull the filters, that'll give me some room to lean the board back. Okay, and here we are around the back side. And let me zoom in just a bit here. So what you're looking at is that power supply board that we were just looking at from the front. And if I separate some of the wiring, you can see that there is a lot of wiring, and it's not wire wrapped, it's soldered to the board. So I don't want to screw around with that, and I can only, if I pull the board forward, let me grab it. If I pull the board forward, I can't move it too far unless I start desoldering wires, and I don't want to get into that right now. So what I'm going to do, like I said, is I'm going to disconnect the wiring here from the main filters, pull those filters out, and that way, like I said, I'll be able to tilt the board back far enough so I can get under there, desolder, and then solder and all that. So, all right, let me see if I could reach up in there. Get these. Get these filters out if I can see the screw head. Alright, now you're looking at the back of the power supply board, and with the filter caps pulled out and with the voltage selector pulled from the back of the chassis there because of the big cluster of wires, of course, I'm able to lay the board down good enough to access the back of the board, of course, and desolder out the old caps, solder in the new caps, and all that stuff. So there you go. So again, I have the unit face down on blocks. I have the raised platform here, okay, that I lifted out of the way. It's not that horrible to lift this, so that's why I'm doing it, so that I can have access to the switches for starters. And then I'm going to flip around to the back side and hit those potentiometers and wafer switches. But anyways, I'm going to change views because I want to point out something that might be useful information to somebody down the road who's servicing these switches. So let me go ahead and do that. So we have some switches down here under this shielded section, and if I pull these wires back, I'm eventually going to get some rubber bands and girth hitch around these around this, what do they call that? Harness. That's what I'm looking for. And I'm going to girth hitch around this harness, pull a rubber band, and hook onto something to hold these out of the way. So you can probably see down in here if I zoom. Let me zoom into position. Okay, you can see these switches. So the backs of these switches are not exactly open, so if you can see the shaft raising and lowering. So if I dribble some contact cleaner down in there, give it a little shot, it will work its way down onto the contacts pretty much. And the same type of switches are down in here. And I'm going to show you sort of the anatomy of this switch here so you can see what I'm talking about. Let me reposition the camera. So essentially what you're looking at over here is the same type of switch, but this switch has two sections, okay? They're linked together, they're bridged together with this shaft, this rod, but the bottom portion of the switch here is essentially these switches down in there, okay, that I just showed you. And you can see, I wish I could zoom in a little closer, but I don't think I can get much closer without everything blurring. Yeah, maybe so. All right, so you see down in here, you could see the, let me find that switch. Okay, so you can see the switch carrier, that contact carrier sliding up and down. So if I shoot some contact cleaner down in here, you know, these other switches that I just can't get to, these switches I could access from the side because they're not covered with that, you know, with that box or shield, whereas the other ones that I pointed out a moment ago are. So I'm going to have to shoot contact cleaner in through the little opening here at the top and kind of flood the area. But if I do that, I will get enough contact cleaner onto that, you know, onto that contact shuttle. So you see where I'm going. And also too, the second half of the switch here, well, the backs are open on these, so that's not a problem. So that's what I'm going to do. I wanted to just kind of point that out. So anyways, I'm going to get to that. I'm only going to hit them just a couple times. I'm just going to spray them out and work them a little bit because, again, I'm not getting paid to service the switches, but I at least want to do that. So I'm going to glove up and then get to it. Okay, so I'm getting my applicator down into some of them little holes there. if I can, yep, there we go. All right. Let me reach under and work these switches here. Okay, let me try to hit these other ones over here. So I'm just flooding them one good time, really trying to. Okay. Okay, now let me get back in here. All right. Okay. I'm going to start hitting some of these wafer switches here. I'd like to be able to get them better, but it's the best I can do. All right, move on to the next. Okay, we have our volume and balance control here. Let me just switch hoses here. All right, so I'm just going to rotate them until the cows come home, and that's about it. So, all right, I'm going to hit the rest of these wafer switches here. Reach them the best I can, considering, like I said, I'm not pulling these controls out. And normally I'd be hitting these with cleaner, but I'd also be using a little. I have a bunch of those little micro brushes, and I'll actually, when I have them out, I'll scrub the contacts. But this is going to have to do, and it's better than nothing once again. All right, y'all, that's all I'm going to do with these controls. All right. Okay, so I did what I needed to do with the controls. Again, I wasn't going into a deep dive there. I wasn't being paid for that, but I at least wanted to spray out the controls once, gain access if it wasn't too big of a deal. And for the most part, it wasn't. And I did. So there you go. So anyways, what I'm going to do next is, while I'm getting my parts lists together, the boards that I'm working on, I'm going to check everything over, tolerance check everything, like I said, while I'm getting my list together. And what I want to do is, and let me kick my exposure down a bit. And I don't know if you can really see what I have here, but I have a couple pages from the service manual. These are the boards that I'm working on, the power supply block and the driver block, or amp block, amp boards, whatever, and the parts lists. So I want to be sure that what's on the board versus what's on the lists, and let me kick the exposure back up. I want to make sure they jive with one another, because during a production run sometimes there can be changes, and I just want to make sure that the values that are on the boards are the values listed in the lists, because I'm going to use these lists, if everything jives, to cross-reference what I have in stock versus what I'm going to order. Okay, so that's where I'm going with that. So otherwise, in the next video, that's where I'm going to come back, start getting the new parts on board, and then button everything up and do some final testing. So there you go, or do some final testing and then button everything up. So anyways, I'm going to end it here, guys, this part 2. And as I always say, peace, love, music, and the vintage audio that brings it to your ears. Till next time, y'all take care.
This has been a Spinning Head production.